I just want to withdraw my money." John's voice came out low, almost drowned out, but firm. The bank waiting room fell silent for a second. Those watching saw a skinny kid with messy hair and an old backpack slung over his shoulder. He didn't look like someone with enough money to even buy a loaf of bread. And that's why the millionaire Hector Ballard laughed. A short, cold laugh, the kind that judges before taking a second look. "You," he pointed with his chin without stopping to adjust his expensive suit jacket. "Withdrawing money, and how much would that be? $10? 20? A lost coin?" The kid lowered his gaze, clutching the wrinkled envelope with both hands like it was all that was left of his world. He took a deep breath. "I just want what's mine, sir." Before we continue with this intense story, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. This helps a lot and makes this community grow. The line started moving again, but slowly, almost dragging. People whispered. It was strange to see a kid alone there in the fanciest bank in the city. John gripped the envelope like someone clinging to the last rope before falling. He'd found it 2 weeks earlier, rummaging through an old box in the room where he now slept, a foster home after his life turned upside down. The tragedy came fast, a car accident. His parents, his little sister, taking everything from him at once. John barely had time to understand, and then, in the midst of the pain, he found the envelope. His name was handwritten on it. For John, "Open when you feel alone." It was his grandfather's handwriting, Don Manuel Herrera, who passed away a year before. A highly respected man, owner of several businesses, including this bank, but John never imagined that inside the envelope there'd be a bank account in his name, opened by his own grandfather, with a letter saying, "One day you'll have to get back on your feet. When that day comes, this money will help you start." The problem was, John had no idea how much money was in his account. He knew nothing about banks. He just knew he needed to survive, and that letter was the only light shining in the darkness. That's why he was there. The teller tried to be polite but hesitated when he saw the simple document John handed him. "Do you have permission from a guardian? An adult with you?" John swallowed hard. "I'm alone." Hector, the arrogant millionaire, heard the phrase and laughed again, this time louder. "So you came to the bank thinking they'd hand you a bag of gold because you found an old paper at home? Kid, that's not how the world works." John clenched his fists, fighting back tears. "My grandfather set up this account for me." "Your grandfather?" Hector raised an eyebrow. "And who was your grandfather? A fisherman? A construction worker? You're in a private bank, you know. This place has shareholders, rules, it's not a toy." Silence returned to the room. Some people watched. Others pretended not to see. The teller cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "Mr. Hector, maybe we should check it. It's in the system. The account exists." Hector laughed again, crossing his arms. "Let's see. You must have what? $100? A sentimental little gift." John stared at the floor. All he asked for that day was that no one humiliate him, but even that seemed too much to ask. The teller typed slowly, looking at the screen with a furrowed brow. Just a few more keystrokes. Then he stopped. He froze. Hector noticed. "What's wrong? Can't read the number? Is it too big for you?" He chuckled, but the teller didn't laugh. His expression started to change. First, surprise, then disbelief. John slowly lifted his gaze. "Sir, is there a problem?" The teller gasped, as if silently startled. "John, this account was created by Don Manuel Herrera." Hector stopped smiling. The name hit him like a punch. The teller continued with a shaky voice. "And the amount it holds isn't small, not even medium." He swallowed hard. "It's an amount that completely changes someone's life." John's eyes trembled. "How much? How much is it?" The teller hesitated, looked at the boy, then at the now pale millionaire. The screen reflected something no one expected, least of all the kid, least of all the millionaire. And before saying anything, the teller called the manager. That's when everything started to change in a way no one in that room would ever forget. The manager appeared quickly, with a firm step, his shirt neatly ironed and a serious gaze. Edward Salvatore was known for being strict but fair. Seeing the kid standing there clutching his envelope, his face softened a bit. "John Herrera?" he asked, looking at the paper. John just nodded. Hector adjusted his jacket, trying to regain an air of superiority. Edward, this must be some misunderstanding, a kid alone claiming saved money, probably an old account that was never closed. The manager didn't respond. He asked the teller, "Show me." The teller discreetly turned the monitor. Edward looked, and then his face changed. He let out a slow sigh. Then he braced his hands on the desk as if needing to steady himself to not show his shock. "My God, Manuel, did you really prepare everything?" John stepped forward anxiously. "Sir, can I withdraw money?" "I need it." Edward raised his hand for calm. "John, first I need to ask you some questions." "Don't be afraid." Hector snorted, annoyed. "Why ask questions? Just mention the ridiculous amount involved and end the discussion." Edward turned to him with a dry, almost cutting look. "Mr. Hector, that's not a ridiculous amount." The millionaire laughed, but this time the laugh was weak. "So tell me, surprise me." Edward looked straight at John. "Your grandfather left you this account before he passed. He transferred it to the bank's main department with deposits, interest, investments, all in your name. He left detailed instructions." John swallowed hard, his heart racing. "And how much is it?" he repeated. Edward hesitated. People in line were already leaning forward discreetly. It was impossible not to notice something serious was happening. The manager took a deep breath. "John, your grandfather left $4,800,000. The sound died in the room. It was as if even the air had stopped. John felt his legs tremble. Hector completely lost his smile. His face faded white. "Excuse me, how much?" he asked, choking on his arrogant tone. Edward repeated more firmly, $4,800,000, and all in his name. John couldn't grasp it. It was like hearing his life turn upside down. "But why? I never even knew he had that." Edward approached, speaking more softly, without sensationalism. "Your grandfather was a very discreet man. He didn't tell anyone anything, not even the directors. But he trusted you, John. He said you had a strong heart, even as a little kid." John pressed the envelope to his chest. His eyes started filling with tears, but he held them back. It's what he always did. Hector, trying to regain composure, pointed at the monitor. This is wrong. It can't be. I'm a shareholder in this bank." "I've never heard anything about this account," Edward replied calmly, without looking away. Don Manuel was the largest shareholder. He had autonomy to create private funds that would only be released with his personal authorization, and that's what he did. A woman in line whispered to another, "Poor kid, who would have thought?" The other replied. "And that guy laughing in his face, what a shame." Hector heard. Tension rose in his neck. "Edward, this situation is getting out of control. You can't hand millions to a kid alone." John looked up, hurt but resilient. "I didn't ask for millions. I just asked to withdraw what's mine, even if it was little. I just wanted to eat without depending on anyone." The words hit hard. Even the security guard at the door lowered his head. Edward placed his hand on the kid's shoulder. "John, to withdraw a large sum, we'll need a legal process. But can you withdraw some to live on?" "Yes, it's your right. Your grandfather planned everything." John breathed a sigh of relief, but it didn't last long. Hector, feeling authority slip through his fingers, leaned toward the manager. "Edward, you know I can legally challenge this. I can demand access to internal documents. I can call the board." Then the manager did something unexpected. He seemed tired, even exhausted. "Hector, you know Manuel didn't trust you. You always said he was old-fashioned, running the bank like a cattle ranch. You said he only thought about profits." Hector opened his mouth to respond but stopped. He had nothing to say. Edward continued. "Manuel knew what he was doing and left clear instructions. All this would only be revealed when his grandson appeared, and his grandson is here." John took a deep breath. "So, can I withdraw something today? Just a little." Edward smiled sadly and kindly. "Yes, John, I'll accompany you personally." But before the kid could take a step, something strange happened. The system glitched. The screen turned gray, and a message appeared. "Access blocked. Founder's authorization required." Edward frowned. That's never happened." Hector gave a twisted smile. "Looks like the bank doesn't trust the kid much." But that wasn't all. It was something much bigger, something the grandfather had prepared, and that's something no one there imagined. The manager tried clicking again. Nothing. The same message appeared on the screen, cold and constant, as if guarding a secret. Access blocked. Founder's authorization required. Edward breathed deeply, trying to understand. That doesn't make sense. Manuel has already passed. How could something require his authorization now? The nervous teller murmured. Sir, I've never seen that protocol. It's not even in the internal manual. Hector crossed his arms, pleased with the confusion. Well, that's it. Mystery solved. Nothing can move without his authorization. And since he's dead, the account is frozen. We end it here. John felt his stomach sink. It was like falling back into the same hole he'd fallen into when he lost his family. He breathed, trying to hold back the pain. But this is mine. He left it for me. It can't be locked away. Edward looked at the kid, then at the screen, then back at the kid. There was something in John's eyes that reminded him a lot of his grandfather. A strange mix of shyness and courage. John, show me the envelope. John opened it slowly and carefully pulled out the folded letter. Edward took it, reading each line as if it was something sacred. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Wait. He ran his finger over a symbol in the corner of the letter. A small drawing, almost invisible, printed on the paper. This is a key. John frowned. Key? Edward pointed to the detail. Your grandfather used this in his most private documents. It's like a code. Manuel was a very traditional man. He liked old things, secrets, safes, symbols. It's possible this code unlocks the account. Hector laughed. Are you saying a drawing will fix everything? That's ridiculous, Edward. But the manager completely ignored the millionaire. John, do you remember anything else your grandfather said? Any phrase? Any story? John closed his eyes for a moment. He tried to recall one of the few good memories he had. He remembered sitting next to his grandfather on a bench by the river, watching boats pass. He recalled Manuel placing his hand on his chest and saying, Johnny, when you feel lost, look for the number that carries our family name. It will always show you the way. John repeated the phrase aloud. When everything's lost, look for the number that carries our family name. Edward froze. Wait, the number that carries our family name. He rushed to the computer. He typed something, one more thing. He stopped. He breathed deeply. John, your last name is Herrera, right? John nodded. Edward slowly looked at Hector. And you're one of the shareholders who always fought with Manuel to remove the traditional safe deposit box sector from the bank. No. Hector rolled his eyes. Yes, because it's outdated, slow, expensive. I've said it 1,000 times. The bank needs to modernize. Edward smiled. A tired smile. So you don't know? Don't know what? Edward turned to John. The name Herrera comes from blacksmith. People who worked with safes, metal, keys. Your grandfather loved those things. And here in the bank, there's an old safe, the only one Manuel asked us to keep. John felt his chest warm. My grandfather left something there. Edward nodded minimally. Let's find out. They crossed the hallway. The atmosphere, once full of whispers, now as silent as a church. John walked beside the manager, taking small steps. Hector followed reluctantly, but without the courage to stay behind. They reached a thick, dark door with gold details and a number panel. It looked like something from another era. Edward swiped his credential and typed a password. The door opened with a deep sound. Inside were several old safes, but one in particular caught the eye. A small iron safe from the 1900s, aged, with the same symbol printed as on the letter. John approached slowly. His heart pounded so hard it seemed to echo in the safe. Edward handed back the letter. John, try placing that symbol in the slot. The kid placed the letter on an almost invisible holder on the front of the safe. A click was heard. Then, another. The metal started vibrating as if recognizing something. Hector stepped back. That's not possible. The safe opened slowly. As if waking from the past, John looked inside. There was no money, not even jewels. There was a golden key and a second letter. He picked it up carefully, with trembling hands. Edward whispered, That looks like a master key. Your grandfather talked about this key like it was a legend inside the bank. Hector's eyes widened. A what? Edward replied without drama, without exaggeration. A key that unlocks any internal protocol created by the founder, including account locks. John stood still, staring at the key as if seeing his own life start anew. But before he could say anything, the manager's phone vibrated. He answered. His face changed. "John, we have a problem." The kid stepped back. "What problem?" Edward breathed deep and heavy. "Someone just entered the system. Someone's trying to freeze your account permanently." Hector paled. John felt the world shake, and the story, already seeming too big, got even bigger. The hallway seemed narrower as Edward hung up the phone. He looked at John with a strange weight on his face. Not fear, but something like urgency. "John, we need to go to the main system room now. If someone's trying to freeze your account, we can only stop it from inside." Hector, who was following, backed up 2 steps upon hearing that. "Hold on. Who would do that? It doesn't make sense." Edward looked at him dryly, almost impatiently. "Mr. Hector, you know as well as I do that there are people up top who would never accept handing millions to an heir who never showed up. Manuel wasn't liked by everyone." Hector turned red instantly. "Are you insinuating that I'm involved?" "I'm not insinuating anything," Edward replied calmly. "I'm saying there are unusual movements in the system, and we need to stop them." "And we need to stop them." John gripped the golden key tightly. The fear was there, clear and vivid, but it wasn't just fear. It was the feeling of carrying something that wasn't just his, something his grandfather had prepared with such care, something that came with responsibility. He breathed deeply. "If I use this key, will the account money be released?" Edward didn't answer right away. He looked at the key, then at the kid. "This key unlocks any command created by Manuel." He trusted the old system, but he also knew many things could change in the future. If there's a lock, it should be able to undo it. "Then, let's go," said John, with a firmness he didn't even know he had. They walked to the upper floor, passing glass rooms, people working silently, all discreetly watching this unlikely trio. A worried manager, a poor kid with a yellowed envelope, and a millionaire who no longer seemed so sure in the world around him. The systems room was cold, lit by blue screens showing constant information. The head technician stood up immediately. "Mr. Salvatore, what's happening?" "The system is receiving freeze attempts from an external terminal at City Hall." "I know," Edward replied. "Open the manual access panel." John watched everything like he was inside a strange dream, one of those dreams you don't understand but know it's important not to wake from. The screen opened to a red square. Emergency protocol, ongoing freeze. 2 minutes left until total lock. 2 minutes. John almost choked. Edward breathed deeply. "Hector, if you know something, speak now. If it's someone from the board trying this, I don't know anything." Hector raised his voice, but the tremble gave him away. "But someone must be scared. There's no other explanation. That a fortune like this falls into a kid's hands will change the game inside the bank." The technician put his hand to his forehead. "Sir, if the freeze is approved, the bill will go to the legal department. It'll take years to release, and it could be challenged." John felt the air disappear. Years. He'd barely eaten well that week. Edward put his hand on his shoulder. "John, the key." The kid slowly raised the hand, holding the golden key. Edward guided it to a metal compartment attached to the central server, a small door with a key-shaped fitting. John approached, but his hand shook. The technician looked at the screen. 1 minute and 12 seconds. "John," said Edward, crouching to his level. "Listen, your grandfather knew you'd come alone. He knew you'd need courage. He didn't trust this to anyone else, only you. This key isn't just metal. It's his voice telling you, go on, use it." John closed his eyes, remembered his family, his sister's laugh, Mom's dinner smell, Dad's hug, and the last time he saw his grandfather, sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. He opened his eyes, inserted the key into the slot. A click was heard, then another. The entire room system seemed to breathe differently. The lights flickered. The red panel started to fade like it was melting. The technician's eyes widened. "It's working. The system is backing off." Hector stepped back. That's impossible." Edward watched everything with respectful silence. The screen changed, cancelling lock. "Authorized owner, John Manuel Herrera." John exhaled sharply, as if he'd carried the world's weight on his shoulders and could finally breathe. The panel lit up green. Account released. The technician slammed his hands on the desk. Done. Everything's released. The account is back to normal. No freeze risk. Edward looked at John, visibly moved, without exaggerating. Your grandfather was a genius. But before they could celebrate, something unexpected happened. The room door burst open. 2 men in suits with stern expressions rushed in. Mr. Salvatore, we need to talk immediately about this bill. Edward got serious. Are you from the board? Yes. And we came to find out who authorized the unlock. John felt his body cool. The man looked coldly at the kid. This shouldn't have been released. The 2 men stood in front of the door like 2 uninvited shadows. One of them, taller, with neatly combed grey hair, opened a black folder with calculated moves. The other simply crossed his arms, gaze fixed on John, as if the kid were a threat. Edward kept his composure, but the air grew heavy around him. Good afternoon, gentlemen. We're in the middle of an internal operation. The release is already complete. The grey-haired man replied with a low, dry voice. Precisely why we're here. The lockdown was activated by a council member and deactivated by a kid. His gaze landed on John almost piercingly. Who allowed this? Edward breathed deeply, holding the tension. It was authorized by the founder, Don Manuel Herrera. The account belongs to his grandson. The original key was used. The second man, the one with crossed arms, stepped forward. That's not enough. The founder left internal instructions that the board must review before any release. This amount can't just fall into a child's hands without supervision. John gripped the key in his hand tighter. He didn't know if he should speak, didn't know if he had the right, but he felt if he stayed silent, everything would be taken from him again. My grandfather left this for me, he said with a firm voice despite the tremble. If he trusted me, why don't you? The grey-haired man slowly closed the briefcase because trust doesn't cover losses, kid. Hector, who until then had been silent, saw this as a chance to regain lost ground. Exactly. That money is a time bomb in the hands of someone without experience. The bank's stability can't be compromised by Manuel's sentimental gesture. Edward turned immediately. Hector, this isn't about stability. It's about following the law. The account is legitimate. The instructions are clear. The advisor raised his hand, interrupting. The law requires legal protection, and we demand to see the full document Manuel left, the complete plan, every detail. John felt a chill run down his back. What if there were no more documents? What if his grandfather had trusted too much in those letters and the key? Edward noticed the fear in the kid. There's one more document, he said firmly. If Mr. Manuel left instructions, they'll be in the main archive, and that archive can be accessed with the master key and the heir present. The 2 advisors exchanged a quick glance, a look that said much more than words. There was something there they didn't want revealed. John noticed it. It was clear. It was like being in the middle of 2 adults arguing over a truth everyone knew except him. The grey-haired advisor spoke. Fine, if that archive exists, open it. But be careful, kid. Any mistake, any protocol failure, and the account will be fully frozen again, and this time there's no reversing it. The second completed the sentence. The bank isn't a playground. It's a serious institution, and we won't let an unlikely heir destabilize processes that took decades to build. John stepped forward. He was scared, yes, but also exhausted from losing everything, tired of being treated like someone who doesn't matter. My grandfather always said I was part of his family. That can't be erased. The grey-haired man held the tablet he carried. Your family, maybe, but the bank's family we don't know yet. Edward led everyone to a smaller room with a dark wooden table and a square screen mounted on the wall. There, the old archives were kept, systems almost no one used, but Manuel insisted on preserving. He breathed deeply. John, put the key here. The kid inserted the golden key into a small device like an old reader. The screen came to life. Green lines started appearing. Then a phrase popped up. Heir, please present your identification. John placed the simple document he had, the one the foster home prepared. The screen analyzed, loaded, then opened a folder named Operational Testament for Exclusive Reading by the Heir. The board members tensed. Edward approached, respecting the moment. John opened the file. The first page was a handwritten letter. He recognized the writing immediately. Your grandfather's, Johnny. If you're reading this, It's because the world brought you here sooner than I imagined. The kid brought his hand to his mouth. Edward put his hand on his shoulder without saying anything. John continued reading silently, but his grandfather's voice seemed to fill him from within. I knew you could get lost, get hurt, even end up alone. That's why I prepared this fund, not to buy anything, but so you'd have a choice, and above all, so no one decides your value for you. John felt a tear roll down his cheek, but he stayed strong. The text then said, and if anyone tries to stop you from getting what's yours, remember, the truth is in the video I left you. It proves everything, proves your origins, proves my decisions, and proves who inside the bank tried to stop it over the years. John froze. Video. The file had an attached video named The Truth About the Inheritance. For John, the advisors stepped back. Hector paled once more. There was something in that video that wasn't just about money. It was about the grandfather's story about the bank, about decisions no one wanted brought to light. Edward breathed deeply. John, when you're ready, play it. And so began the moment that would change everything for him, for the bank, and for those trying to hide the truth. John stood still in front of the screen, as if time had entered a dark room with him. The cursor over the video blinked slowly like a heart waiting for its next beat. Edward kept his hand on the kid's shoulder. The advisors were inflexible. Hector took 2 steps back, which didn't go unnoticed by anyone. John, said Edward calmly, you decide if you want to watch it now. The kid breathed deeply. His chest rose and fell quickly, as if he'd run a long distance. My grandfather wanted me to see it, so I'm going to see it. He pressed play. The screen stayed black for a second, then a blurry image appeared, the face of grandfather Manuel Herrera, sitting in the old armchair at the country house John vaguely remembered. His gaze was tired but firm, as if he knew exactly who would be watching someday. Johnny. His voice filled the whole room, warm, real, almost like a hug. John squeezed his interlaced hands. His eyes started to burn. If you're seeing this, my boy, it's because life has been too hard on you, too hard for your age. I'm so sorry. Sorry I'm not there to hold your hand, but I'm with you in another way. The kid breathed heavily. Edward lowered his head respectfully. The grandfather continued. I opened an account for you, not to make you rich, but to protect you from the world when I couldn't anymore, and also to protect you from those who never accepted my decision to leave the bank to my true family. The board members exchanged glances. Hector pressed his lips. Johnny, you might not know yet, but there were those who tried to stop it for years. They tried to convince me to change my will. They tried to take control of the bank. They said you were too young, too weak, insignificant. John closed his eyes for a second. I never accepted it because I saw who you are. I saw how you helped your sister cross the street. I saw you caring for your mum when she was sick. I saw you cleaning the porch floor even when no one asked. You have something many rich people never will, Hart. John couldn't hold back the tears this time. The grandfather continued, more serious. And if you're watching this video, there are people trying to stop you from getting what's yours. People who think a poor kid deserves nothing. People who've always laughed at my decisions and will laugh at you too. Hector swallowed hard. That's why I left proof, documents, records, decisions signed by me. Everything is stored in the file you just opened. These documents show who was loyal and who tried to snatch what belonged by right. The grey-haired advisor stepped forward. That's absurd. He's inventing intrigues to divide the bank. Edward raised his hand. Silence. Respect the founder. The video continued. John, you don't have to fight alone. The key I left you opens everything. Don't be afraid to use it. The bank isn't for whoever makes the most noise, but for whoever has the most truth. The image started to fade, as if the video was ending. Before disappearing, the grandfather smiled slightly. I believe in you, Johnny, more than any man who's been in this bank. Be strong, and never let anyone decide who you are. The screen went black. Silence. A heavy, immense silence that revealed more than any shout. John wiped his face with his arm, stayed silent for a few seconds. The board members were tense and uneasy. Edward looked at them. Well, now it's clear. There's an official document, there's a video, there's proof of the founder's decision, but the grey-haired advisor didn't give up. This changes nothing. The board can still appeal. This kid can't inherit a fortune without supervision. That's irresponsible. John raised his head. I never asked to be responsible for anything. I just asked to get what's mine. I just want to eat. I just want to live. The second advisor replied sternly. That's not enough. We need supervision. We must ensure this money is used properly. Edward crossed his arms. And who decides that? You, the same ones who tried to block the account before investigating. The grey-haired man retorted. The lockdown was a preventive measure. Edward shot back. Preventive? Against whom? Against a 2-year-old kid who lost his whole family. The advisor clenched his teeth. This bank doesn't operate on sentimentality. John stepped forward, a small step but full of bravery. My grandfather wasn't sentimental. He was fair. He prepared everything because he knew you'd try to stop it. If he trusted me, then I have to trust him. The grey-haired advisor sighed irritably. We'll take this to the national courts. Edward took half a step back, incredulous. Courts? For what? The account is settled. Everything's documented to decide if this boy can have immediate access to the money. The kid felt his heart freeze. And how long does that take? His voice almost broke. The advisor replied without emotion. Months, maybe years. John lowered his head. It was like hope being snatched from his hand, just as he started clinging to it tightly. But before silence could envelop everything, the technician in the room turned. Startled. Gentlemen, something's happening in the system, very serious. Edward approached. What just happened? The technician pointed at the screen. Someone from the board just transferred a large sum to an offshore account. John raised his head immediately. Who? The technician hesitated, then said the name. A name that left everyone present frozen, including Hector. The technician breathed deeply before speaking, as if fearing the weight of the name about to come out of his mouth. The transfer was initiated from Hector Ballard's terminal. The room turned icy. John's eyes widened. Edward slowly turned to Hector. The board members stood still, as if the ground had vanished under their feet. Hector tried to laugh, but the sound came out weak, almost breathless. This is a mistake, some system error. I didn't even touch anything. The technician shook his head nervously. It's not an error, sir. The system logs the terminal ID, time, and user's biometric signature. It's impossible to fake. Edward stepped forward, looking Hector straight in the eyes. You tried to steal the money from the founder's grandson. That's absurd. I was just near the computer. Maybe the system, Edward interrupted. Hector, stop. Hector opened his mouth to defend himself, but no words came out. The grey-haired advisor, who until then had tried to keep composure, stepped forward. Cancel the transfer immediately. The voice came out shaky, not out of concern for the kid, but for the scandal this could cause in the bank. The technician typed quickly, but soon paled. No, I can't cancel. The transfer's marked as absolute priority. Only the one with the master key can reverse it. All eyes turned to John. The kid took half a step back, surprised. I don't know what to do. Edward gripped his shoulder firmly. Yes, you do. Your grandfather left this for you to solve. Hector started to despair. John, kid, listen, it's not what it seems. I have nothing against you. It's the bank, the system. They'll blame me for everything. John looked up. You laughed at me. Hector swallowed hard, lacking self-confidence. I didn't know who you were. And if you knew, you'd treat me better just because of the money. Hector stayed silent, a silence that said it all. Edward touched John's elbow. Let's go to the main panel. John held the golden key. He felt the weight of the decision, but also felt something new inside him, something like an echo of his grandfather's voice telling him he could. They rushed to the final panel where critical transactions were monitored. The screen showed the transfer. Amount, $2 million. Destination, unidentified external account. Status, in process, 67%. The technician said, if it reaches 100%, the money's gone, and recovering it will be almost impossible. Edward looked at John. Use the key now. John brought the key to the reader, but hesitated before slotting it. Edward, what if I mess up? What if I lose everything? The manager knelt to his level. John, you're not alone. You have the truth, you have the key, and you have the right. Your grandfather trusted you. I trust you too. John breathed deeply and inserted the key. The reader's light turned blue. The screen changed. Master key detected. Authorized heir. The transaction stalled at 82%. "Reverse it," said John almost in a whisper. The screen flickered twice. Reversal initiated. Desperate, Hector tried to step forward. "Don't you understand, John? If this reverses, they'll destroy me." Edward blocked the way. "You destroyed yourself, Hector." Hector fell into defeated silence. The screen showed reversal complete. The amount has been returned to the main account. John released the breath he'd been holding, as if freeing his heart from a huge stone. But before he could breathe relieved, another message appeared on the screen, one no one expected. Additional action detected. The founder activated a final protocol. File available. John's destiny. Final decision. Edward frowned. John's destiny. The grey-haired advisor let slip. "No, Manuel couldn't have done that." John's eyes widened. "What is that?" Edward looked at him seriously. "John, it seems your grandfather left one last document. A document that would only release once you reversed any theft attempt." John felt his heart pound. "And what's in that document?" Edward breathed deeply. "We don't know, but judging by the name, it seems to be your grandfather's final decision about everything. About the bank, about you, about the future." The board members exchanged anxious glances. Hector paled, and John, small among powerful adults, was now the only one who could open it. Edward touched his shoulder. "John, when you're ready, open the file." And the whole room waited. John stood still in front of the screen, as if his own name weighed more than the golden key. The file glowed on the monitor, pulsing slowly. John's destiny, the founder's final decision, seemed to call to him. Edward breathed deeply. "John, you don't have to open it now if you don't want. It's too much to take in all at once." The kid shook his head. "My grandfather wanted me to open it, and I've waited too long already." The board members were tense, almost motionless. Hector backed toward the wall as if wanting to disappear into it. John clicked the file. The screen darkened. A new video started loading. The same familiar room, the same soft yellow light. The grandfather sat with that calm, firm posture, but now his gaze was different, more solemn, as if about to say something that could change the world. "Johnny, this is my last message to you." The kid clenched his fists, feeling his chest tremble. "If you're seeing this, then you've gone through everything I feared. They tried to stop you, tried to steal from you, tried to tell you you're worthless, and yet you made it here." Edward blinked slowly, impressed. The board members lowered their gazes, uncomfortable. "I want you to know that this bank wasn't built with money. It was built with people, real people. The cleaning staff, the employees who say good morning, the security guards who open the door. The humble customers. The heart of the bank has always been this, not these cold boards that only think of themselves." One of the advisors clenched his teeth but stayed silent. The grandfather continued, "My plan was never to give you a fortune. My plan was to give you freedom. The freedom to be who you want, to study, to have a home, to have choices, and above all, to never be treated as invisible." John felt his throat close. "But for that, John, I needed to make sure you had courage. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to stand up, the courage to say no when they tried to silence you." The grandfather's voice grew firmer. "That's why I left this final protocol. It's clear, it's definitive. It can't be altered, challenged, or revoked, because it's mine." The grey-haired advisor spoke low, almost a whisper. "No, he didn't do that." The recording continued. "John, from today on, you'll be the sole beneficiary of the fund I left, and also the legitimate owner of the shares that were mine." John's eyes widened. Edward brought a hand to his mouth, surprised. "You don't have to handle anything right now. It's too much for a kid, but I left someone prepared for it. Someone I knew since he was small. Someone fair. Someone who would never leave you alone." The image shook as if built for this exact moment. "His name is Edward Salvatore." Edward froze. His heart seemed to stop. "Edward will be your financial guardian until you reach the required age. Trust him. He's never betrayed my trust. He's never bowed to men who shout louder. He knows who you are. He knows who I was, and he knows what this bank should represent." Edward swallowed hard, overwhelmed by emotion, unable to speak. The video continued. "As for the board members, if you're watching this, know that your attempts were predictable, and that's why I've recorded all decisions in my official will. Any attempt to challenge them will result in losing your positions. The advisors paled. The bank is for those with soul, not those with greed. Hector lowered his head, defeated, unable to look anyone in the eye. The grandfather smiled one last time. Johnny, live your life calmly, and remember, you were never too small to be important. I love you, my boy. Goodbye. The screen went black. Silence. A silence no one dared break. Edward breathed deeply, his eyes filling with tears. John, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. The kid looked at him not with fear, not with doubt, but with a trust he'd never felt for any adult since the tragedy. My grandfather trusted you, so I trust you too. Edward closed his eyes for a second, trying to hold his emotion. The advisors, with no other choice, simply bowed to the truth. We'll have to inform the general board, said the grey-haired man with a broken voice. No, Edward replied firmly. I'll inform them. Now you do what's yours. They left, defeated. Hector tried to approach. John, I'm sorry. John raised his hand, cutting gently. I don't know you, but you showed me who you are. And he turned his face. Hope was starting to return to him. John walked down the hallway back to the main lobby, with small but firm steps. A strange feeling ran through his chest, as if finally coming into the world with his own name. He was no longer the invisible kid everyone had ignored for the past months. He was still the same John, but now he had a story, a truth, and someone who believed in him, even from afar. Edward walked beside him, quieter than usual. The weight of the revelation still echoed inside him. The responsibility Manuel left wasn't small, but he felt something he hadn't in years: a purpose. Passing the desks, the employees who'd witnessed part of the commotion looked at them with respect. Some whispered, "He's the owner's grandson." John pressed the envelope to his chest, a gesture that conveyed both memory and courage. Entering the main lobby, the atmosphere was different. No more laughs, no more sidelong glances. Hector sat in one of the armchairs, head in hands. He looked the picture of defeat. Seeing John, he stood slowly. John, his voice broke. I was wrong. I let greed get the better of me. Your grandfather always thought I was too impulsive. He was right. Forgive me. John looked at him, not angry, but without excuse in sight. I can't decide that, but what you did almost took away everything my grandfather had left, and I just wanted to withdraw a little to eat. That's all. Hector lowered his head. No defense. Edward placed his hand on John's shoulder and guided him to the central teller. Now, he said calmly, let's do what you came for from the start. The teller, the same one who'd witnessed John's humiliation hours before, was now serious, attentive, and almost excited. John, how much would you like to withdraw today? The kid thought. For a moment, the image of the letter, his grandfather smiling, the words about freedom, all that passed through his mind like a movie. I don't know how to use big sums of money, he said. I still eat at the shelter cafeteria. I just wanted about $200 to buy my things, so I don't have to depend on anyone anymore. Edward smiled. It's a good start. The teller typed the info, but before confirming, asked, John, is that all you really want? John looked at the line, at the people, his small hands on the counter. He breathed deeply. My grandfather said I could have freedom, so first I'll learn. Then, when I know, I'll handle more things. The teller nodded, moved by the unexpected maturity. The machine printed the receipt. The money was released. John picked it up slowly, like someone holding something they've never had but don't want to lose. He turned to Edward. And now? Now, Edward replied. We'll handle everything together. I'll help you study, understand the bank, have a future. Not because your grandfather told me, but because I want to honor his beliefs. John smiled slightly, the kind of smile that comes after many held-back tears. The whole room watched the scene, not as a show, but as witnesses to a truth no one expected. Hector stepped forward with a low, almost broken voice. John, I wanted to tell you that John raised his hand, cutting softly. I don't wish you any harm. I just want you to treat others how you'd like to be treated today. Hector was left speechless, maybe for the first time. Edward then gave the kid a light pat on the back. Come on, John. You need a better place to live. Let's fix that too. John breathed deeply, feeling a light breeze in his chest. as if life had finally opened a window where before there was only a closed door. And as they walked toward the bank exit, he looked up, imagining his grandfather watching from somewhere. "Thanks, Grandpa," he whispered softly. His life hadn't returned to normal, but it had started anew. And this time, with someone by his side, with choices, with a name that's true, and with hope. Sometimes those most ignored are precisely those who carry within them the strength the world insists on denying. John didn't just win money, he won the right to exist with dignity. And every person who struggles in silence, carrying losses and pain, deserves this too, to be seen, to be heard, to be respected. Life can knock you down, but it always leaves an opening to start over. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. This strengthens our work enormously and helps these stories reach more people who need to hear something good today.